Congratulations to the new District 5280 Assistant Governor for 2021-2022, Diane Good, our own immediate past president and two-time president. Diane has been named Assistant Governor for 3 districts, Hightown, Rancho Park, and Wilshire. We are very proud of you. Congratulations. And we certainly hope that you will remain active with us. So
Looking at clubs, right?
You better.
Amen. Amen. It's quite a testament to Diane's many and wonderful contributions to Rotary. So we're thrilled for you. And we're proud to have a club that produces more district leaders. So congratulations again. Oops. Now, the Pageant of the Arts has been announced for this year. There will be an information session on Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. Obviously, the Pageant of the Arts will be virtual once again, and the finals will be held on April 17th. So we will need to organize how we will participate and connect with Uni High and any other schools that might be participating with us. So I'm going to try to be there. I have another meeting, so I'm not quite sure if I can get back in time, but I'll do my best. Phil, it would be great if you can be there, and anybody else who is interested, but we will be making further announcements about the Pageant of the Arts. It's just great that they were able to get it back and going. And I wanted to mention that the district is starting a series of programs and discussions on diversity, equity, and inclusion, the first one being this Saturday morning. This session is primarily intended for peace chairs and club presidents, but others who are interested, I'm sure, could participate. And I think this will be very important because discussions like this will help shape the future of Rotary. Registration is available on the District 5280 website.
Nancy,
Yes.
will you send me a link for that Pageant of the Arts informational?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, as I mentioned, I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
I was just going to tell Phil to go to the website for 5280.
Also, the weekly newsletter has all that information from the district.
Yes, multiple forms of information are fine too. So as I mentioned last week, the next district breakfast will be on February 2nd from 8 to 9, and a relevant theme, creating a club your members will love. Should be a worthwhile session. Advanced registration is required, and it's available again on the district website. One of the things that Diane and I were talking about is doing a better job of informing the club about the service activities that the club is involved in, but also there are a lot of members who do various kinds of volunteer work on their own apart from the club, and we'd like to share this information with our members. So we will be having periodic segments in future meeting presentations about community service projects that we're funding or participating in. And I also invite you, if you're involved in a project on your own away from Rotary, to let us know, because we will share that too. And I wanted to mention that Gail Smith will be taking over the coordination of the weekly writers for the commentary on our meetings for the rest of this year. Thank you, Gail. And she will be sending out monthly emails asking for writers for the coming meetings. And I ask as many people as possible to support her. Dwight has volunteered to be our scribe for today. So thank you, Dwight. We appreciate that. And we will, over the course of the coming months, especially be looking at ways to enhance the creative look and the content of our club newsletter. And we will be inviting your comments and suggestions as we move along. And now we have a Merchant Minute with Peter Klinko. And Mark, I invite you to introduce Peter.
Well, Rotarians, Peter's a long time friend of ours. Peter and his wife, we were all newlyweds together when Peter was in the legal business. And I remember 40 years ago, Peter is a new lawyer saying over and over again, boy, I'd like to be in business. Boy, I'd like to be in business. Well, be careful what you wish for. Peter is the owner, entrepreneur, chief chef, and so forth of Skylight Gardens in Westwood Village. And as an old friend, I reached out to Peter. I said, Peter, you've got to meet our Rotarians and tell us all about your restaurant. So, Peter, it's all yours.
Great. Welcome, Peter.
You're on mute, Peter. Peter, you're muted.
Let's see. I'll see if I can ask him to unmute himself. Don't be shy.
Peter, you're on mute.
I know, I'm being klutzy with the computer, okay? Am I on mute now? Like I said, I think my wife sometimes wishes she had that mute button for me, but that's another story. Listen, Mark and I go back a long way. I keep thinking about that. All of a sudden, now I'm Social Security landing. You know, we were just young kids at the time. Let me see if I can share my screen with you guys to.
Let me make you a co-host.
Okay.
And just momentarily, and then you will be able to share your screen.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm sorry I didn't ask you before when you came on. I just need to find you on the list. Ed. Peter, is your screen name your name?
Exactly.
That's what I thought.
He's up. He's on.
I can see that I'm looking through the participant list, which is different than the screen gallery.
It's
If you want to start
mine is the
looking,
fourth one from the
I'll
top. I
find you.
don't know about you.
Oh, here you are. I found you.
Found me? Good.
Okay, now you're co-host.
Let's see if I can get, I mean, someone's already having the screen. I think we can't share at the same time.
I turned mine off.
Okay. Hang on. Can we do it now? This isn't helping.
I'll double check to make sure that that took. Nope, you're co-host, but it's not coming up for some reason.
Comes up as a speaker.
Yeah. I got that part. Everybody see me.
Well, you're right out there in the ocean, so that's good.
Let's see.
Did you hit share screen, Peter?
Now, let me,
Hit the share screen. See the green button at the bottom of the screen that says share screen?
yeah, I'm hitting that and I'm seeing something I shouldn't be seeing.
And then you should, I can't see what you're seeing, but then it will take you to a window that gives you various options.
Yes.
You will click on what it is you want to share and then hit the share button.
All right, let me see. Did I get that right? I'm looking at a PowerPoint presentation. Are you seeing it?
Not yet.
You got it? Everybody seeing it now?
No, sorry.
No.
No.
Damn.
No.
All right, hold on. One last try.
Chat.
I think, Peter, you got to hit a share icon on the bottom right side of your screen. Have
Yes.
it click on the screen you want to share.
That go through? No. All that work, okay. Well, I don't want to take up you guys' time while I try to figure out how to do this. Let me just tell you a little bit about why I
Okay.
all right. You know, as Mark said, I'm the owner of Skylight Gardens. For those of you who remember, that was that wonderful restaurant, the Hamlet Gardens, that was created about 35 years ago by the Lewis family.
Right.
And, you know, when they told me to turn it back to the landlord, I went home. My wife said, don't let that go. We ought to go in business, like Mark said. And so after we cut the deal to get the Lewises out, I made a deal with the landlord to rent Skylight Gardens. We've been open for 8 years now. Sadly, we're not opening the way we want to be open, but you know, what are you going to do? This is a crazy time that we're living in. We have 3 or 4 wonderful rooms that I wish we could share with you. I'm trying as best I can. Did that get it done?
Nope.
Nope, didn't work. All right. We have seating for approximately 170 people. We can do it in a private studio, which used to be the old Will Wright's ice cream parlor. We have a beautiful atrium, which is a 35-foot ceiling with a glass skylight, which is really beautiful. We've got a special area called the Rotunda, which has a bar, which is for right by the bar, and it has a fireplace. And then we have a bar that's just wonderful for walk up. We completely gently renovated the restaurant to cover this. We make all of the pastas ourselves upstairs, handmade ravioli, focaccia. I'd show you, but I can't get it to. I have my chef making pictures of the custom-made cauliflower pizzas, which a lot of people love. We have a whole series of appetizers from the raw fish, beet salads, the bruschetta with fresh tomatoes, and then we have charcuterie plates. In addition to that, we have a full line of dinner items, which include many fish. Our salmon is outstanding, and we have several vegetarian items for people. Our minestrone and papia pomodoro are vegetarian. We also have some wonderful desserts, which I'm embarrassed to say I can't find and share with you, but they certainly look good. And of course, during these days, our biggest seller is our hamburger. We're still doing takeout, but we have we've been impacted like everybody else in this pandemic. But we do have craft cocktails that we sell outside with our wax top cocktail program. You can check our website out to see them. We are also, when we reopen, we're one of the few venues in Westwood Village that has live entertainment. And I would have shown you neat pictures of Stevie Wonder, who decided just to sit in with our guitarist and play one night. We also have some wonderful options in terms of doing big events, bar mitzvahs, weddings, and the other. I'm sorry to say that I can't get onto this, but my phone number, and please feel free to call me. My cell is area code 310-984-1640. And the restaurant is 5310-824-1818. Did I get it all done in 3 minutes or less, Mark?
By the way, I just want to add, I've been to your restaurant many times. I love it.
Thank you.
I highly recommend it. So it's great to have you with us. Thank you, Mark, for making
Nancy?
this possible. Yes.
Nancy, just real quick, I was there for a pre-COVID birthday party for my dad, and we had about 14 people there. I'm sure he can do bigger parties, but 14 people, they handled it perfectly. And it was right during a power outage that they had about 2 years ago. And they still were able to cook all the food and get everything out in a very reasonable time. And it was just a good experience. So if you're looking to do a post-COVID birthday party or something like that, it's definitely a good choice.
Thank you, Phil.
Oh,
You know, the
that sounds
sad
great.
aspect of the whole thing is some very smart lawyers have pushed the issue in front of a judge about where is the relationship between closing outdoor dining and a decrease in COVID-19 cases. And the judge wasn't impressed that the county had any jurisdiction or any basis to make that. We're all kind of going, because as a little editorializing, I don't think they know what they're doing. So they're trying to do something. And we're the easy target to have us to being closed. Because I want to do my outdoor dining. We have a beautiful space on Lynbrook. You know, we're ready to go. We just need a little help. But we make great food. I don't know how else to tell you. The recipes are fantastic. Phil's right. We really appreciate people like Phil coming in. It's a neighborhood place. It always has been. We draw from the neighbors. I'm glad to speak with all you and see whatever we can do. We want to be helpful, and we also want your help.
Well, we look forward to being with you again live. So welcome. And by the way, I have to apologize. I was having a couple of technical glitches earlier, so I accidentally skipped over the introduction of our guests. And Peter being one, Roger Stull, we're happy to have you here. I know that Ed Jackson invited you. And Ed, I see you, and Ed, so I'm glad to see both of you too. Again, it's great. And of course, our guest speaker will be introduced in just a second. We're thrilled to have you with us as well. Is there anybody that I am missing that I'm not seeing? So, okay, with that, we will move on to our guest speaker. So Tom, if you would like to introduce him.
Bill Rowan's going to introduce him.
Okay, great, Bill. Over to you. Bill, you're muted. Bill, you're on. Okay, there you are.
Yes, I think we're very fortunate to have Andy Hill with us today, who is a great Bruin, UCLA Bruin, and close friend and player with John Wooden. And he was on his championship teams, and he's written books and is going to tell us, I think, a little bit about his relationship with John and where his life has gone. So, Andy, you're on.
All righty. Well, thank you. Nice to be here. I see a couple old familiar faces, Roger Stroll, Ed Jackson. Hi, guys. It's been a while. It's always great to get the opportunity to share Coach Wooden with people. I was extremely fortunate. I think there are probably a few Bruins in this room here, this Zoom room. But for those of you who didn't know him well, Coach was the greatest coach ever. His records were truly remarkable. He won 10 NCAA championships in 12 years. He won 88 straight games. He won 38 games consecutively in the NCAA tournament. Truly extraordinary. Perhaps his most stunning record was that his record at Pauley Pavilion was 149-2. So Bruin fans got used to winning, I think. But what really made him extraordinary, I think, was the sort of gentleman that he was, the sort of person that he was, that really made him stand out and stand above the field, not only for having records that were extraordinary, but in his own way, being extraordinary as well. John Wooden was actually the happiest man I ever met. Mark, those quotes that you read earlier from Martin Luther King, I think are very reflective of Coach Wooden. that whole idea of, don't look for happiness, do good and happiness will find you, I think in many ways summarizes Coach Wooden's life. I grew up in Westwood. I went to Fairburn Avenue School, Emerson Junior High School, and University High School. And honestly, until I was about 15 or 16 years old, I was a big UCLA fan, but the idea of going there to play seemed pretty absurd. Fortunately, I did get that opportunity and went to UCLA very much because I just fell in love with basketball at the same time that UCLA started winning NCAA championships. And so talk about a rocket ship ride. Those first couple teams with nobody bigger than 6'5", and heck, they even had a Jewish kid named Hirsch. So, why couldn't I play there? And when I got there, we still used to play freshman basketball. I had a really good freshman year. I was co-most valuable player with a guy named Henry Bibby, and have my name on a trophy with some pretty impressive basketball legends. But my 15 minutes of fame were pretty much up already. And I was really close to my dream of playing at UCLA, but actually my dream of playing at UCLA largely consisted of sitting on the bench at UCLA. And I didn't like it. And of course, Coach Wooden seemed to be the guy who could have changed all that. And I sort of figured that if he liked me, he would have played me, which of course makes sense when you're 20. I don't see any 20-year-olds on this call. You all understand now that, that's not how you make decisions in life, not based on who you like, but who can get the job done. And in the 3 years I was at UCLA, we went 87-3 and won 3 national championships. So obviously there were very few opportunities to go into Coach Wooden's office and say, Coach, you better put me in. We're getting clobbered. In fact, we weren't getting clobbered at all. We were unbelievably successful. So when I left UCLA, I really was discouraged, felt like I had failed, and went into a very competitive business, the entertainment business, and had a lot of success in that business. I ended up the president of CBS Productions and did shows like Touched by an Angel and Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, Walker, Texas Ranger, Days World, Rescue 911, Caroline in the City, and then had the great good fortune to run into a very unpleasant fellow by the name of Leslie Moonves, who fired me because I was having far too much success. And at the time, it seemed like the worst thing that ever could have happened to me in the world. I loved the job. I was succeeding beyond my wildest dreams. But of course, I think one of the things we've all found in life is that our biggest disappointments often lead to our greatest successes if we process them properly. And I had a lot of time off to figure out what it was I really loved doing. And one day I was actually out on the golf course playing at Encino Golf Course. I'm sure that a few of you have been out on the Encino links. I was on the 16th hole. I had about 200 yards in. And the guy I was playing with, and I played with all the time, Joe, he says, Andy, slow down. Get your balance. You're hurried. Now, Coach was a lunatic for balance, and I wrote a book called Be Quick But Don't Hurry with Coach. These were themes he talked about constantly. And honestly, as this buddy of mine was talking to me, it was like Coach Wooden was sitting on my shoulder. And in that moment, I got this weird stillness over me and hit about as good a shot as I've ever hit in my life to about 1.5 feet. And in that wonderful, awful moment, I realized I needed to call Coach. That in fact, the success I'd had in the entertainment business came from knowing how to organize a team and get them to work together towards a goal. And to do that, you had to have creative people, and they're like really good players. They're always hard to manage, but you can't get there without them. And I guess I was pretty good at it. And I realized I needed to call my old coach who had a phone number. This is 25 years had gone by, a phone number that was so old, it didn't have an area code in front of it. Now, I don't know many guys besides Bill Rowan old enough to remember before we had area codes, but I knew Coach lived in the Valley, And I figured if there was one guy who hadn't moved, it was John Wooden. So it honestly took me about 24 hours to get up the nerve to call Coach, because I wasn't going to eat crow. I was going to eat a boxcar filled with crows. And I finally dialed that number. My heart was beating a mile a minute. And then I got the greatest sound you can get. You know, the answering machine picked up. Whew, I'm not going to have to talk to him. I can just leave a message. And the thing beeps and I go, "Hi, Coach, this is Andy Hill." Now, keep in mind, 25 years, I wasn't sure he'd remember me. That's a long time, which would have been terrible. But then I thought to myself, Andy, you were a pain in the ass. He'll remember you. He just might not want to talk to you. So that's what's going through my head when the phone's ringing, the answering machine picks up, and I say my name, and bang, he picks that phone up. That crappy old dude was screening his calls. And it goes right back to where we were 25 years earlier. He goes, "Where are you?" You know, come on, Coach, say hi. "Where are you?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean, where am I? Where are you?" And he took a beat and he changed his tone. And it was a life-changing moment for me, because what I heard on the other end of the phone was a very different tone. He said, "When are you going to come see your old coach? You know, I'd love to see you and catch up." And it kind of blew my mind. And I went to see him the next day, and we spent 5 hours together talking about leadership and talking about life. And, you know, smart guy Andy, who had to realize all these smart ideas I had, I'd actually stolen them all from Coach, who, of course, that was his greatest thrill. Didn't feel like I took something from him. And when I told him about it, he felt like he gave me something. And I know he felt good about it too. So from that day forward, we became really good friends. In fact, you know, Coach was somewhere between a dad and a granddad. I didn't get along very well with my own pop, so it was a magical relationship. I got the opportunity to do so many events with Coach. You know, one of the highlights of my life was going with him to the White House when he did get his Medal of Freedom, when the Medal of Freedom still meant something. And seeing Coach sit under that big portrait of Abraham Lincoln in the East Room. I was the only player there. Go figure. You know, it was one of the greatest thrills of my life. And I got to spend the last, well, I retired about 4 years ago, but I spent 15 years after I wrote the book doing motivational speaking, talking about Coach and his pyramid of success. Obviously, the pyramid is his life's work. It really comes down to understanding that focus on what you can control, and what you can control is you and your effort and your preparation and your readiness. And it's certainly a powerful lesson to pass along to lots of other people. I'll have to tell you a few stories at the end, and then maybe we have a chance to do a little Q&A. But, you know, as I mentioned before, Coach and I worked very close when I was at UCLA and he was the coach. He was pretty removed. He was kind of distant. And when we reconnected, you know, he's an Indiana guy. You know, out here, everybody in Hollywood is hugging and kissing. And, you know, he's from Indiana, where you stick your hand way out, you shake hands with somebody. And feelings are things you don't do much. You have them, but you don't talk about them. Well, many years had gone by, and Coach and I were driving to Burbank. We were going to do a TV show called Power Lunch on NBC. And because I had a sports car, I borrowed my wife's big SUV because I could get Coach in and out of there a little easier. He was pretty infirm at about 94, 95. And I mean, it's great talking to a bunch of locals because you know where I'm talking about. I was on the 101 freeway. I crossed the 405 freeway and just past Van Nuys Boulevard, and I'm driving to Burbank, and out of the blue, John Wooden said to me, "Andy, have I ever told you how much I love you?" And first thing that happened for me is I thought I was going to drive off the 101 freeway, but fortunately I had borrowed my wife's car, and as Bill will tell you, I would not dare mess up my wife's car. So I didn't drive off the freeway. And the next thing that came over me pretty powerfully too was I thought I was going to start to cry, but I thought, man, if I started to cry, I would freak that old dude out. So I said, Coach, no, you've never told me that before. I've seen it in your smile and I've felt it in your hug, but to hear you put those emotions into words, wow, thank you. I love you too. Well, it's what John Wooden said back to me. I want you to think about, because this really embodies him and it really is what he was all about. 95 years old. And John Wooden said to me, Andy, I've been working on expressing my emotions, and I think I'm getting a little bit better at it. That's John Wooden. The essence of John Wooden was trying to just get a little bit better every day. And if you can stack 365 little bit betters on top of each other, it's amazing how much you can change. And, as opposed to waiting for other people to change, I can promise you it is a lot easier to change yourself. So let me close with one last little story, an amazing moment that I got to experience once again at a local spot, the Valley Inn, just off of Sepulveda. I'm sure many of you have been there, the John Wooden Shrine Room. Well, Coach was 98 years old, and I had the great good fortune to travel with him and do lots of events with him. He wasn't just a great coach. He was the greatest motivational speaker I've ever heard. Did any of you, if you raise your hand, anybody ever hear him speak?
Mhm.
I mean, will you agree that he was just the greatest speaker you ever saw? I mean, he was unbelievable, and he was unbelievable every time he did it. So Sporting News had decided, they had done a poll, and John Wooden had won the award as the greatest coach ever. Not the greatest college coach or basketball coach, just the greatest coach ever. And there's a guy named Vince Lombardi, who was a football coach, who was a distant second place.
Wow.
And so Coach was 98, and he was really failing. And so it was a really unique event. I was incredibly fortunate to get to be one of the 3 former players to speak. It was Andy Hill from Uni High, along with Marcus Johnson, the first recipient of the John Wooden Award, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the greatest player ever. So what am I doing there? I don't know. But when it was time for Coach to accept his award, you kind of figure, wow, this is a trifecta. The greatest coach ever, greatest speaker I ever heard, giving what we were really, really sad to feel and sense was going to be the last time John Wooden ever spoke in public. And sadly, it was. So what did he say? Well, the first thing he said, I think if you really knew John Wooden well, you could kind of figure out. The first thing he said was, the guys who really deserve the credit are my players, the guys who were here. As Coach said, I'd like to think I helped. And I turned to the fella sitting next to me named Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I had my little, let me see if I can find it for you here, my little UCLA championship watch. There you go. I even found it. He's a pretty cool little deal here. And I turned to Kareem and I said, hey, Kareem, I said, I got 3 of these. You got 3 of these. Doesn't he have 10? And Kareem said, yeah, you bet. That's why we both have 3. But that was Coach. To give credit to other people was just very natural. The next thing he did kind of blew my mind because I didn't see this coming. And keep in mind, he was 98, and I think we were always kind of waiting for the lack of memory to set in or him to lose track. And so out of the blue, he said, oh, by the way, I made a big mistake in my pyramid of success. I'm sitting there going, heck, I've been on the road for the last 12 years talking about your pyramid. Now you're going to tell me you made a mistake? What the heck did you do? But this is Coach, always trying to get better. He said, I left the most important word in the English language out of my pyramid. And that word, and Mark, it goes back to what your quotes were earlier. He said that word is love, L-O-V-E, love. And it was pretty dramatic. I mean, you could have heard a pin drop, and I think we were all kind of trying to hold back the tears as he threw in a little poem, bell in the bell until you ring it, and a song in the song until you sing it. and the love that's inside you isn't put there to stay. Love isn't love till you give it away. And so now we're all just on the verge of losing it. In fact, I'll be honest, I kind of was. So what's the very last thing John Wooden ever said in public? You know, think about who he was to those of us who were lucky enough to be there. He'd been our teacher and our friend. He taught us how to lead and how to be part of a team. He taught us how to be a champion. Probably more important than anything else, he actually taught us what it looked like to be a man, a husband, a father. A lot of us didn't have one who really was someone we could look up to. So what's the very last thing he ever said? He said, fellas, I just wish I could have done more for you. I wish I'd done a little bit more. Because at the end of the day, like Martin Luther King said, it's in giving to others that you fill yourself up. And Coach certainly found a way to fill not just himself up, but the world up with his leadership and with his love for people. That certainly is something to me. It's why when I look at those letters, I think of Coach Wooden, and I'm proud to be a Bruin. So if anybody's got any questions, fire away.
Just great, Andy, just great.
When did you graduate from uni?
Pardon me?
When did you graduate from uni?
I graduated from University High School in January, mid-semester of 1968. I was there with the great Roger Stroll and the great Ed Jackson. We had quite a posse there, didn't we, fellas?
I just want to say, I wouldn't.
Ed Jackson keeps telling us he's the only one that graduated from Uni High.
Not true.
Was the stream still running?
Roger.
I just want to say that I went to Fairburn Emerson in uni also. Then I made a bad decision. I went to USC for 2 years, and then I graduated from UCLA with honors. But Andy was really kind. Andy lived right behind Westwood Ho. His dad coached Jerry Norman for his stock brokerage firm from Coach Wooden, which damaged the Bruins, and then we lost Andy Crum on top of it. But Andy was really nice. He gave me a ride home every day. I grew up across from Emerson, and Andy gave me a ride home until I got cut when I was a 10th grader. He gave me a ride home in David Holman, and he gave people nicknames. Andy was Pudgy at Emerson, and then Coach Borio, Courtney Borio, who played for Coach Wooden. When Andy was Pudgy at Emerson in the 9th grade, Coach Borio said, I'm going to make you into an athlete, because Andy was smart, but he wasn't an athlete. And he made him run the monkey and all this stuff. And Andy was a star player. Nobody could stop him. And, he gave nicknames to people. So he called me Streak, because I couldn't run and I couldn't jump. So he called me Streak, and he gave me an idea. So I called Ed Jackson Mad Dog. And Ed Jackson didn't know he got the name Mad Dog, because I was afraid of my shadow. And when he looked like he was going to go to the basket, he was very determined. So I got out of the way, and I called him Mad Dog. And he didn't know until about 5 years ago that I was the one that did that. But I would just say Andy was really kind, a great player. Nobody could stop him. If you came out to guard him, he went around you on either side of you. And if you left him alone, he would shoot the equivalent of what was a three-pointer. The only problem he ever had at uni was as a senior in the playoffs at LA High School. He played either Jefferson or Jordan, and they had 10 guys that were equally good, and they platooned against them. So Rick Schwartz and Chuck Parrott and David Holman and Eddie Halverson and Gorilla and Jeff Weir and all these guys could not play 2 units coming in every 5 minutes. But the last thing I just want to say is that Andy doesn't know something. Paul Westphal just passed away a couple of weeks ago. And what a traitor he was, because when I went to Coach Wooden's school at Pally, he got on the bus. Paul Westphal got on the bus with his big feet and no shoes on, right in front of Westwood Ho, about 50 feet from Andy's house. I could have thrown a baseball from the bus and hit Andy's house. And Paul Westphal went to Coach Wooden's school in the Palisades and then went to USC. What a traitor. Not Andy, Paul Westphal.
Ed Gold, do you have a question? Ed, go ahead.
Yeah,
Andrew, I have a question. Coach Wooden was a consummate, I guess, champion for team efforts. What would he think of these days? For example, I graduated from Duke University, and what Duke does is recruit, the top 5 players of in the country, high school players each year. They only play 1 year, and you watch them play, and they're all hot dogging to make sure that the pros see them and they get a good contract. What would Wooden think of these one and done type players who are all for themselves and have tattoos and ponytails and all of that sort of thing?
Well, he'd find a way to adjust is all I'm going to say. I mean, one thing I would tell you about John Wooden is he never talked about winning. He was the most competitive guy I ever met. And, let me tell you, if he could only have Kareem for a year, he would have loved him. He would have found a way to make it work.
Chris Bradford, and then Phil.
Andy, I just wanted to point this out to everybody. This is Andy's book that he wrote with Coach Wooden. I was privileged enough to be at a book signing at UCLA when both Andy and Coach Wooden were there, and both of them signed it. This book, if you can get a copy of it, is a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. So
okay, I have an offer and a story. First of all, if you talk to Bill Rowan, I'll get him a dozen books. If you want a book, go get one from Bill. All right.
Great.
So he'll have a bunch of books. But Chris, the other story I want to tell you is about, I don't know if you were at the very first book signing we did in the student union, but no. I had never done a book signing before. This was my first book. And we get there at 10:30 and there is a line out the door. And I'm pretty sure none of them are there to see me. And I've never signed books before, right? So I Coach, what do I do? He says, well, just sign your name. And by the way, write it legibly. He was very concerned that I don't do one of those little signatures you can't read. And I think if you look in there, you'll see that you can read both of our names because he didn't like it any other way. So a couple people go by and the third fellow in line comes up to me and Coach, the next person in line has got like things, shirts to sign, and Coach is being so gracious. I figure I better talk to this guy. And he tells me that this is like a thrill of a lifetime for him. And he's always wanted to meet Coach Wooden. And, this has just been a bucket list thing for him. And I go, wow, that's fantastic. He said, well, listen, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I have to leave. I said, really? I said, where do you live? He said, I live in North Carolina. I'm not kidding. He said, I live in North Carolina. He said, oh, wow. I said, what time's your flight? He said, I didn't fly, I drove. So there's a John Wooden story for you.
Boy, amen. Phil?
That's how much he meant. That's how much he meant to people. And I can also tell you that I never met a single person in all the years that I traveled. I was very lucky to work for a really good company called T. Rowe Price, and I was on the road for them for 15 years. And I met thousands of people who couldn't wait to tell me their unique experience in meeting John Wooden, which was exactly the same as everyone else's. He talked to me. He asked me about my family. In fact, you would be hard pressed to meet anyone who ever met John Wooden who asked him more questions than he asked them.
Oh, interesting.
And people love to be heard and seen.
Okay, Phil, you had a question, and then Chris.
Well, I just want to say, thank you for your presentation, Andrew. And he's 100% correct. Every player that I've heard talk about Wooden has exactly the same things to say that Andrew did. He was consistent. He was famous for sending his players out to the local schools to give talks, to do short demonstrations at the YMCA or wherever they could get into. And as far as being a speaker, he was top 2 speakers I've ever heard. One was George Raveling, and one was Coach Wooden. But everything he's saying is spot on, lockstep with every other player that I've heard talk, and it's just an honor to get to hear more stories about him. So thank you for being here.
Amen.
Well,
Christine.
Philip, let me add on to that though, because I think there's an important element of Coach's teaching that you just underscored. Coach made complicated things simple and then repeated them a lot. So that idea that everybody went out to all these different schools and all these different kids from all these different backgrounds went out and told the exact same story. Why? Because Coach told the same story over and over and over and over again with all of these little expressions and all of his poems. They were all telling you who he was, what he valued, what he thought was important. And so I think when you think about it organizationally, that's really something that every organization needs and very few organizations have, which is if you send everybody out, do they all tell the same picture, the same story? And actually, when I went to write my book, Bill Walton is one of my best friends in the world. I'm a very lucky guy. I know he's the maniac on TV, but to have Bill as your friend is a very special thing. And when I first started writing my book, I went down, I took a camera and I said, I'm going to spend a day with Bill and interview Bill about Coach. And I got on the freeway to drive home and it was pouring rain. And what hit me right between the eyes was this guy went through 4 years with John Wooden, literally on the other end of the telescope, right? This guy was the greatest player ever, and I was at the end of the bench. And every time they came down the court, Coach said, throw it to Bill. And I just wanted to get in the game. And after 4 years, and after another 25 or 30 years had passed, we had the exact same impression of this guy. Very, very unique that everyone sees you the same way. I think that is an incredibly clear indicator of authenticity. That means you are who you are, and you are all the time. And that was Coach.
Amen. Chris Gaynor, you were waiting, and then John O'Keefe.
Yeah, Andy, thank you for your expressing your thoughts. I'm curious. When I was at UCLA, freshman basketball, and nobody left early. Now we have the basketball players that are 5-star McDonald ranked. They come in and they leave after 1 year. Did you ever discuss how that affected the game with Coach Wooden and what his thoughts were on athletes leaving so early?
Well, yeah, of course. For the first thing I would say is if the NCAA gave a whit about athletes and education, they would play freshman basketball again. The idea of coming into school and having to make that kind of an adjustment is absurd. But of course, the NCAA cares about money. And the money in the game has become so big that it's distorted things. Mick Cronin had a 5-star kid coming in this year. Yeah. He never even got to UCLA. He's playing in the G League. They're paying him $350,000. So is that a good thing? No, but it unfortunately is the reality. I'll tell you one thing. I think the coach would be the first one to say, if you're 19 years old and can go make yourself $10 million, go do it. But I would also tell you that when my friend Bill Walton was going from his junior year to his senior year, he got offered the equivalent of millions and millions. He said, you got to be kidding me. I want to play another year for John Wooden.
Oh.
And I don't think that exists anymore. But, it's not for the good of the kids. It's for the enrichment of the people who are running the show.
Right.
Wonderful. John, you had your hand up.
Right. Andy, that was a terrific talk. Thank you very much. I have one question. and one anecdote. The question is, who was the president who gave John Wooden the Medal of Honor when, as you said, it really meant something, which it doesn't mean much anymore? Who was the president?
It was George Bush.
George Bush, senior or junior? Senior
Junior,
Bush?
I'll tell you a story about this. It's pretty wild because when we went to this thing, first of all, Walton called me on the phone. He said, you're going to give George Bush a piece of your mind, aren't you? I said, no, Bill. He's the president of the United States giving our coach an award. So I'm going to say thank you. And it was an incredibly wonderful ceremony and deeply meaningful. And when we went through the receiving line at the end, we took a picture with the Bushes, and I started to walk away with my wife, and he said, hey, hang on a minute. And, the President of the United States says, hang on a minute. I guess you hang on a minute. And I turned around and he said, hey, aren't you the fellow who wrote that book? And, so I said, yeah. And, we sat there and talked for 5 minutes. He told me how much he loved the book and how much he admired Coach Wooden. And, I can only say, listen, guys, I don't want to get into politics, but all I can tell you is these last 4 years have been very hard. And there were a lot of things about George Bush that he did politically I didn't like, but he was a lovely man. He is a lovely man. And and I think we deserve that. And I think we have another lovely man in the White House.
Yeah. Here's my anecdote. I used to sit up, I had season tickets for many, many years for basketball. And I sat up in the corner right above the UCLA team with Tom Barron and our wives. And I brought a basketball with me to one of the games, and I was determined to get down there at halftime to where Wood who sat right behind the bench, to get down there. So I literally had to sneak down there at halftime and handed him the basketball and said, Coach Wooden, would you sign this for me to my son Johnny, who went to your basketball camp? He said, no, he wouldn't do that. All he would ever do on signatures is put his name. He would never put to anybody at all. Because I have a couple of books which I got signed same way, just John Wooden, very clear, but he wouldn't say to anybody.
Well, that's an odd one. Hey, Chris, what does it say in your book?
Maybe he didn't like me. Call me Coach, I think is the name of the book.
Andy,
I've got the best wishes. Sorry.
Andy, I've got the same book, and it's signed by Coach Wooden, and it says to Steve and Debbie with best wishes.
There you go. So I got
Really?
Coach Person. Honestly, Coach, and if you ever write a book, you should know this. Personalize everything, because if you don't, it's on eBay before you get home.
Oh, amen. Andy, I just wanted to interrupt for one moment. We normally end our meetings at 1:30, and I recognize that some people will need to go. But if you have a few more minutes,
Sure, absolutely.
Questions, I can see that the group is really enjoying hearing what you have to say.
Well, Nancy, let me also, before anybody asks a question, also say to folks, I'm happy to do this for any organization. If any of you guys have different things that you're a part of and are looking for a speaker, Bill can tell you how to get a hold of me.
Great.
Perfect.
Good to know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Tom, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I'd like to ask Andy if this isn't typical of Coach Wooden. I had the occasion one time to drive Coach to a Blue Shield meeting, and I asked him a question. I said, your first center on your first championship team was Fred Slaughter at only 6'7". Was he the best player ever to exceed his ability?
6'5".
6'5", yeah. And Coach says, Tom, he says, no one ever exceeds their ability. Now, Fred came closest to it, but no one ever exceeds their ability. I felt as foolish as could be.
Well, the truth of it is that nobody ever gave 110% and nobody ever exceeded their ability. Our job here is to get as close as we can to our ability, knowing that we will never fully fulfill it. And I think that one of the things that Coach really embraced and understood was that every champion embraces the journey, and the journey is hard, and the journey is at times painful. And if you can learn to actually embrace the process of getting better, as opposed to be fixated on outcome, it's amazing what you can accomplish.
And the journey.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I had
Ed?
yeah, I had a question. For example, when Wooden coach, I don't think, and you would know more than this, Andrew, than I, made probably $35,000 a year. I was reading USA Today a while ago, and for example, Coach K at Duke, his salary for the year before or whenever it was recorded was $10 million. What do you think Wooden would think about coaches being paid well in the millions of dollars?
He thinks it's obscene. As a matter of fact, the most he ever made, Edwin, was $32,500.
Wow.
You know, and when Coach first came to UCLA in 1948 in the summers, he drove a milk truck. But, you know, this is the insanity of college sports. And, you know, it is unfortunate. I do think that the monetization of these young athletes is unfortunate, particularly for them. They don't get a chance to be kids. They don't get a chance to just enjoy competing. Everything is about their brand and, you know, did I showcase and how did I look for the people who came to scout me? And, you know, it's where we are and we have to make the best of it, you know, but it is ridiculous. The idea that a head basketball and football coach is paid more than the head of the university or the head of the chemistry department is ridiculous.
Or the governor.
Or the governor. It's ridiculous. That said, I love Mick Cronin and he's happy making 3.5. So, you know, there you go.
Good man. Good man.
And by the way, let me give a full-throated, Mick Cronin is the rightful heir to John Wooden. May he be our coach for a long, long time.
I hope you're right.
If you get the opportunity to ever spend any time, he's a very interesting, funny, informed guy compared to our last coach.
Maybe we should try to get his autograph.
He might personalize it for you.
It may be worth some money.
Thank
Andy,
you so
quick
much.
question.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom.
A quick question. This team this year is very well balanced, and I agree with you about Mick Cronin. Have you ever reflected on the balance of the team and depth as opposed to one or two individual stars?
Well, you know, I think that oddly enough, this is kind of, you don't want to hear this, they're better off with their best player getting injured.
Yeah.
You know, their best player was a kid named Chris Smith, who is a sweet kid who simply didn't have it in him to be a lead dog. You know, I played with guys who were lead dogs. You gave him the ball, it wasn't coming back. And it shouldn't come back because you know what? If you gave it to Bill, he should shoot it. You gave it to Sidney, he should shoot it. And Chris didn't have that. And I think a lot of the other guys on the team were deferring to Chris. But the truth of it is, I think, you know, Mick Cronin is more than happy to have 4 stars, but he's going to get 5-star recruits, folks. Don't be disappointed in him. He's a really good recruiter. And if you can't get guys to come to UCLA, you can't coach and you can't recruit. For goodness sake.
Amen.
Where do you want to go? Lawrence, Kansas? Or, you know.
Very well said.
Gordon, you had a question.
Real quick, I went to uni, class of 69, just wondering, we had a Len Hill in our class who I think went to Harvard or Yale or something, wondered if he's like your older brother or something.
Richard Hill was the son of Judge Irving Hill, and he is not my brother or my cousin, but I know.
Len Hill.
What's that?
Len Hill.
Len Hill was my brother, yes. Len sadly passed away from a glioblastoma, just like Paul Westphal just passed away from a glioblastoma.
He went to Harvard, right? Harvard or Yale or something?
Pardon me?
He went on to Harvard or Yale or something, right?
Yes, he went to Yale.
Oh, okay.
Wonderful. Andy,
Thank you,
so much
Andy.
for
This is
being here.
Ed Jackson. Thank
Okay.
you
Oh,
again.
Ed, there you are. Hi.
Thank you for speaking. Hello, Nancy. It's always a pleasure to see you. You made it seem like family when I was at uni. Roger can tell you, we did feel like family. We were proud to play on the same team that you led. And I did go to that game at LA High where Jordan, some of my grandfather's neighbors played on that team. And I remember the second half, they triple teamed you.
Yes, they did, Ed. I remember that too.
But like I said, I like the fact you used to go to the gym at uni with the guy who just died, Mr. Westfall, and you guys used to work with us like we were, family and friends, and I always appreciated that. My first year away from home in Pullman, I remember you embraced me when you guys came up to travel, and you took me around to the hotel room with all the players. It meant a lot, somebody that I looked up to that was still there. And I think you left something out. Didn't you do tour? Weren't you responsible for tour of duty?
No.
No?
No.
You were.
But hey, it was a good show. So what the heck, Ed? Yeah, sure. That was my show.
Because I knew you knew Zev pretty well. You knew Zev, and you knew Zev's kid when he was at Cal, Berkeley, being the coach of basketball there. So anyway, I just thought that, but I appreciate you for speaking, and thank you. As I said, it meant a lot to a little freshman kid at uni being taught by the best uni had, and you never let us go. You were always there with us. And it was good seeing you at the Dylan concert not so long ago.
Andrew, how tall are you?
Pardon me?
How tall are you?
How far am I?
No, tall. What is your height?
Edwin, the honest to God truth was I never made it to 6'1", but I said I was 6'1". And the last time I was in the hospital, they measured me. I'm about 5'11" and a half. Son of a bitch.
I've shrunken also. So
yeah, I think you're shrinking, Andy. You were about 6'1", 6'2".
Okay.
Yeah, we're going down.
Roger, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but you're welcome to go ahead and ask your question.
I just got hit in the head, but I'm Roger's wife, Kathy.
Welcome. We're happy to see you.
Thank you, Nancy. Andy, I've been married to Roger for about 20 years, and every year, millions of times, he talks about how great you are and were. And I just want to know, my parents are friends with Mike Warren. Did you know Mike Warren?
I'm sorry, I can't really hear you. The sound's not great.
She's asking about Mike Warren, going to Vips and all the places with Coach Wooden and seeing Mike Warren.
Mike Warren is like my big brother. I am so lucky that guys who were my heroes growing up, Mike and Lucius, they're some of my best friends. And, I can tell you the first time this is kind of mind boggling because, Mike was my hero growing up. And the first time I went into the hospital, I've had some cancer issues. I'm fine now, but Mike Warren came to my hospital room and he brought me a CD disc, a DVD disc. And he had gone around and gotten 100 people and all the basketball team and everybody in the Morgan Center, and he filmed them all wishing me to get well soon.
Oh.
And Mike came up to the room. He delivered this to me with Kenny Washington. I don't know how many of you remember the great Kenny Washington.
Yes.
And you can imagine this. We're up on the cancer floor at UCLA, and I was really sick, by the way. And the nurse had to come by after about a half an hour and ask us to keep it down because we were laughing so hard. Ed, you mentioned it earlier, but I do think that is the transformative piece of sports. And it allows you to experience and bond with people that you otherwise might not. And certainly I know for myself, had I not chosen basketball, if I had chosen to play tennis, I would not know any African Americans. we grow up in such a segregated society. And certainly as we move forward, because this was also from one of Mark's quotes earlier from Martin Luther King, you know, we're afraid of what we don't know. And certainly I feel very blessed that I fell in love with the basketball, because that was just a game that caught my imagination, and it still does. I mean, I still am blown away by the talent of these people, and certainly the degree to which, you know, the NBA has really made itself into the world's most significant sports league outside of soccer is pretty amazing, because it was kind of a honky-tonk game when it first came here in LA. And it's
well, I'm so glad you're feeling better. I'm so glad you're feeling better. And I just wanted to know, when you took Roger home from school, what was the car that you drove?
A gold Buick.
Yes, that's right. We
gold
called it Bertha. Bertha. We called it Bertha. It was a Buick Special. And believe me, it was not special.
Like I said, somebody nicknamed Andy Porky, and then he started nicknaming everybody. He called me Streak, and I called Ed Mad Dog. And thank you for inviting me, Ed. I love you. I love Andy Hill. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you all. It was great to be with you.
Thank you for being. And by the way, Andy, as a token of our appreciation for your time and inspiration, we are making a donation in your name to the Westwood branch of the Los Angeles Public Library.
Thank you. By the way, I will pass that on to my friend Bill Walton, whose mom Glo is having a rough time, but Glo was a librarian her whole life. So
wonderful. Okay, excellent.
He will be thrilled. And I'm going to give Bill Rowan a bunch of books. So if you want one, you're Bill Rowan's problem.
I want one.
Bill, I'll be in touch with you. I definitely want one.
Great.
Thank you
Thank
again.
you, everybody.
Wonderful session.
Thank you. Wonderful
Thank
talk.
you.
Thank you.